Well, greetings to each of you, and welcome back to another episode of the Shakedown, a podcast about corrections, for corrections, and by corrections. I'm your host, Aaron Dawson. Good to be back with you on this special episode, if you will, being that this is a National Corrections Officers Week. So, in light of the fact that it is National Corrections Officer Week, let me say a very special thank you to each of you who are involved in the corrections field, whatever your role may be, whether you're a line officer, whether you're a supervisor, whether you're an administrator, whether you are over the kitchen or you do the disciplinary hearings or you're a training officer, whatever your role is, if you are involved in the field of corrections, let me say a special thank you from me, from the Shakedown. You are appreciated, and I hope that in this week that may not be a different week from the normal ins and outs and ups and downs of a week in the corrections field. But if even just for a few seconds, recognize that you are recognized and that you are appreciated. As far as this episode this week, got an awesome opportunity this week as we close out this series talking about finding the positive in what it is that we do. I'm tickled to death to be able to say that we're going to have a very special guest on the episode. This week we are joined by none other than Mr. Tate McCotter. He is the Executive Director of the National Institute for Jail Operations. So looking forward to talking to him and getting the opportunity for you to hear him as well. So, guys, before we jump into the interview, as I've said throughout this series, there's a host of things that are negative that we could focus on, but the point is, if we are proactive about finding those things that are encouraging, that are positive, there's plenty there. But without getting off into that again and taking time away from the interview and conversing with Tate, let's not belabor the point any further. And so without further ado, let's jump into that interview. All right. Well, welcome back, guys. And as promised, we are tickled to death to have for the first time in 30 plus episodes. Shame, I know. But we're happy to have join us on the Shakedown, the Executive Director of the National Institute for Jail Operations, Mr. Tate McCotter. So, Tate, welcome to the Shakedown. Good to have you with us this time. And couldn't think of a fitting. I wish I could say I thought about it ahead of time, but I wasn't that shrewd. But with it being National Corrections Officers Week, what a perfect time to make this all come together. So glad
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Good to have you on. And Tate, we've been talking about in this series on the podcast. You know, it's so easy to focus on the negative. We can find it quick, and you know, from a personal, from a mental health, from a psychological, from just good grief, the encouragement and the motivation to go to work, that's not healthy. And so occasionally we've got to be reminded to go find that positive, to go look for it, because it's there. And you know, hopefully in featuring the interviews and the programs around the country that are going on where good things are happening. Hope that's an encouragement. But you know, so often I know from being a jail administrator, your focus becomes right here, you know, my facility, my staff, my county, my area, and that's the world. And you lose sight of the fact that, good grief, there's 50 states, and every state's got, you know, a multitude of counties or, you know, parishes if you're from Louisiana, but you know, that all face the same thing, that, you know, are dealing with the same thing. And so this morning in this interview, I kind of wanted to focus on kind of the big picture, you know, back up a little bit. And I know with what you do and your interactions, whether it be in person, whether it be by email, whether it be my phone calls with people all over the country. Wanted to kind of take it, from that perspective, from the big picture. So just to kind of get us rolling, I guess a good way to ask the question is what are you seeing in the career field of corrections from a big picture perspective that is encouraging to you?
So that's an interesting question, because most of the time when I'm talking with folks, and you're right, corrections is corrections, detention, jail. We all kind of have, there's so much similarity wherever you're at.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mostly get hit up on is this thing? It's like, let's talk about everything that's wrong. Let's talk about everything that's bad. Let's talk about what really sucks right now. And it's I can't tell you how many times I get hit with that. And it's also from the media. It's from there's just a lot of venom out there. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of conflict. And I'm not suggesting by saying what I'm about to say that that's not real, and nor am I suggesting that we should bury our heads in the sand. But to your point, and your question is, what do I see that's encouraging out there? Usually, we don't talk about things that are encouraging. I mean, we're not.
Right.
I mean, and you know what? I like the question because I think we should. I think we need a lot more of this. And so, maybe some of that goes back to the fact that historically, corrections, we are creatures of some very defensive habits, if that's a good way to say that. I mean, if you think about it, everything that we do, Aaron, in our profession, we operate, and we're trained to do this. Our mindsets go into defensive mode, right? So we put up walls, we fortify, we protect, we block, we defend. And it's been that way in this profession historically, like forever.
Right.
It's funny, tell me that everybody hasn't heard this that works in our space. A good day is what? When nothing happens.
That's exactly right.
I mean, how often do you hear that, right? It's, hey, today was a great day, nothing happened. Pump fish, walk out the door. Well, that's a defensive mindset. And I know that for a lot of folks, watching a defensive athletic event is really boring because people want to see Hail Marys, they want to see touchdowns, they want to see, but in our space, for those that work what we do, those that work in the trenches, so to speak, we have this defensive mindset where it's like, no, I don't want to see any action. I want things to be quiet, knock, knock, right? It's almost taboo to even say it. You just don't go there. And so, so anyway, going back to your question, what's encouraging? And well, let me back up. We'll say one more thing. This defensive mindset, it would be very easy right now for our profession to, especially when you're thinking about some of the current issues that we're dealing with, staffing shortages, budgets being slammed and decreased and underfunded or just pulled out from underneath you. It would be so tempting, Aaron, to just, you know what? Let's go back to that trench, right? Let's dig in. Let's hold our breath till the stink goes away. We ride through the stuff. This is what we do in corrections, right? We're tough. We're strong. We're just going to get through it. And so that's defense. That's what we do. But what I am seeing in corrections that I think is so encouraging right now is that we are approaching change. Maybe it's out of necessity because of the circumstances, but for whatever it is, we are approaching this change, and it is breeding a new type of administrator and officer in our space. And I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a great thing. So, I mean, would it be nice to say, hey, wouldn't it be great to go back 20 years, back the way it used to be? Well, it's not. And it's not going to be.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to be. So the encouragement I see is that we have the most flexible, most adaptable people
Yes.
on the planet working in our space in corrections and detention. And I couldn't be more proud of everybody. I mean, and I'm not saying that because it's National Corrections Officer Week. What I look out there that's encouraging, our biggest asset are you. It's the people.
Yeah. 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 And the ability to, like you said, to adapt to the new set of circumstances. That's a basic definition of success. Is, okay, I got a new set of obstacles in front of me. I mean, here I am, here's where I am, here's where I'm trying to get. There's an obstacle. Well, I can sit here and whine and cry about it and say life is over and just drift off into chaos, or I can rethink what I'm doing. I can re-strategize, come at this from a different direction, and then we can find some success. And I'll tell you that one of the things in talking to these folks that are doing these programs around the country is that hammered through over and over and over again, that, we saw in our communities, we saw in our facilities, we saw in our agencies, that we were always done this, but that wasn't getting it. And so we had to shove that to the side and take a chance and let's say, all right, let's try this. And so I agree with you that motivation to win, that I'm not just going to take the beating and sulk in the corner, that motivation, that absolutely not. We are coming out of this on top one way or the other. I 100% agree. 100% agree.
I like that, Aaron. I mean, we're not playing Survivor here. I mean, this
exactly.
This isn't our game. And maybe there was a day where we did do that because we're like, hey, the pendulum is going to swing back, right? It's going to get normal again. And look, you don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like,
right.
But I do know this: whatever it was, it is not going to be. It's not going to be the same. And so this change factor, I just see the resiliency out there. But it's not just being. We're stubborn. I'll be the first to say that. But it's not stubborn stupid. We're being stubborn because you know what? Few people would do the kind of job that our corrections people do day in and day out. Thank goodness we're stubborn. Otherwise, this would have fallen apart a long time ago.
Yes.
But we're also approaching this, I think, in a very new, and this is deliberate for a lot of people, a very new way. Aaron, the increased creativity and ingenuity that I see out there coming from staff, from officers. It's not just make do with what you got. I mean, you've heard me talk about the whole MacGyver thing before and how dangerous that can be.
Yeah.
They're figuring out ways to do things smarter, better, more efficient. What perhaps you didn't have the staff to do before even very well. Now we're figuring out a way how to twist that, navigate in new waters. And I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
COVID is kind of a perfect example of that. That stunk for everybody. I mean, anybody who was, whether you were a line officer, a supervisor, or an administrator, medical, anybody that was working in a prison or in a jail or in a facility during COVID, you all know nobody had to adapt like we did. Nobody.
Right.
I'm not trying to poke the bear at law enforcement and other allied agencies, but what we had to do in our facilities 24/7, we couldn't shut doors, we couldn't lock down. This was us. I mean, we had to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at COVID and I'm thinking, well, it would be really easy, again, defensive mindset, to go, oh, geez, let's just survive this thing. But you know what I saw come out of that? People starting to question, going, you know what? Maybe we have some people in our facilities that should have never been there to begin with. And if you're going to release them now, why can't we look at the criminal justice system and revamp that and get rid of some of these mentally ill that should have never been here to begin with, or whatever it might be. Some of these misdemeanors that you're like, come on now, really?
Right. Yeah.
Right. We saw judges that prior to that time were like, no, I'm not doing video, nothing. I got to look them right in the eyes. Right. Guess what? Now we're starting to see some bridges being built between the courts and our folks, where it's like, hey, can we keep this train going? Because there's some good here. I mean, and is it perfect yet? No. But there are some really great things that I think that change is kind of facilitating a really proactive way for us to approach our profession. And quite frankly, it needed to happen. So this is good.
Yeah. 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 Yes. And the continuance of, if you will, of the career, and you can see that in industry across the board. It's not just law enforcement. It's not just corrections. I mean, culture changes, society changes, expectations change. The type of individuals that we're dealing with on both an inmate perspective and a staff perspective, communication, terminology, it's constantly changing. So the ability to just roll with it and like you said, well, here's our new hand that I've got. Here's my cards. I may only have a pair of twos, but I'm going to play the dadgummit out of this pair of twos, and make it work. And I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said. Everything you just said. And I think it's important for the line officers and the supervisors and the administrators who, again, their focus is this wide. I'm looking at my facility, to take note of the fact, to back up and look at, okay, let's look from 2020-ish, when about COVID started, to now, and let's look at how we've adapted. Let's look at the changes. Some of it may have been forced, but let's look at the changes we've made. 5 years ago, if I'd have said, this is the number of people I have to effectively run this facility, otherwise we'd have to shut her down. And here I am in 2023 looking at going, we rock this every day in a way that we never would have imagined feasible or possible. So yes, totally. And the importance, like I said, of recognizing that and noticing that and being encouraged by that, okay, yeah, it's frustrating to say, well, I would love to, or I would rather. Well, that's not it. Look at who I've got, look at what I've got, and look at the positive job that we're doing. I mean, if I can't even at least half smirk, maybe not a full blown smile, if I can at least just be like, you know what, high five, that we got this is awesome. This is awesome. So yeah.
That reminded me of just a while back. I was talking to an administrator who runs a jail, a great jail in South Dakota, and he said to me, it's funny. I can't count how many training sessions I've been to, and just the amount of focus that we have spent over the years in my career on classification. He goes, it's paramount, right? That's anybody knows that if we're going to protect inmates and staff, we got to make sure we're classifying right. And that from a principal standpoint has never changed. But he said something that caught my eye. He says, I learned a lesson with COVID. And I said, what's that? And he said, as much as we hated this whole cohort thing and separating people out and, X amount of time in quarantine, right, before they could go into general pop, he goes, and we did that all in the name of COVID. So whatever classification was before, now it just says, are you positive? Are you not positive? And that we'll throw in gender too. But I mean, it really kind of blew up classification across the country. And he said, you know what? I know everybody's kind of going back to we've got a new normal that we got to figure out, right? With that and visitation and in programming and all of these things now that are opening back up. But he said, one thing that I'm thinking that we might keep. And I said, what's that? And he goes, do you know how much we've been able to drop our contraband levels because of these quarantines and cohorts? He said, I would have never, ever thought of that being a result of doing that. But we used to have guys that would just get arrested, right? So that they could drug run stuff in or whatever it was, because they knew they were going to be back in general pop in a day or two. But you know what? If you're in there for 5 days, nah, that ain't happening. Right. And he said, we have found that our levels of contraband have dropped significantly because we were doing these cohorts. And he said, now, I don't know exactly what we're going to end up doing, but he goes, I've got some takeaways here in my brain. And I guess that's what I'm meaning, Aaron, about looking at things maybe a little bit differently. And what I'm encouraged about it's really easy to go on autopilot in our profession.
Sure.
And man, I'm just seeing great stuff. I'm seeing I'm seeing guys and agencies that are using technology, social media in ways to recruit that I've never seen before. And you know what? We got to learn how to do that. Why? That's the young generation that's coming in. And so that's an awesome new door. And I'm like, go get them. That's great. I love seeing some of that stuff. I mean, things that have gone viral on TikTok or whatever, and you see a jail reproducing that, and you're like, that's a great environment, right? I love that. So I mean, hey, we're going to show you today what a shakedown looks like. I mean, I'm like, phenomenal. Make it happen.
Yes.
So
yes. Awesome. Well, we're about out of time, but before we wrap this up, Tate, being that it's it's National Corrections Officer Week and that we're talking about what we're talking about, from your perspective, if you could offer a word of encouragement to anybody that's listening, what would you say? What would be that word of encouragement?
Again, great question. Well, it's National Corrections Officer Week. So before I answer that, I just want to say to all of our viewers, listeners, and everybody that's watching this podcast, thank you. Thank you. Sincere thank you. Very sincere thank you for what you do day in, day out. I know it can be a really thankless job. You don't hear that enough. And so what I would tell you is, beyond just me saying thank you, you are appreciated more than you know, and what you do, and beyond maybe what you don't hear from the public, because it's really easy for media and point fingers and all of that. But we might all do this job for different reasons, but I do know one thing. The camaraderie, we use the word brotherhood at times, and sisterhood, where we're such a unique group of people. I love it. I love our folks, but I would say this: don't forget that you matter. Don't forget that you make a difference. And I mean that whether you're a line level officer, a supervisor, as administrator, a support staff, medical, whatever, you really do make a difference. And so what I would just say is keep smiling, keep the positive attitude. There is so much negativity right now. And you know what? Test drive this thing. You walk in and make it a point to say just something nice to somebody in there, particularly with each other. I know that it can be a little different even with the inmates, but man, if you can walk up, for example, walk in the control room and say, you know what? I know you have a very crazy busy job. You're looking at 40,000 cameras and whatever else. I just wanted to tell you thank you. You are fantastic at popping doors. What do you think that's going to do for the person running that control room?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't have to be an administrator to say that.
Yes.
We need to tell each other thank you more. So I'm saying it to you all. Thank you. I would say, for a word of encouragement, you do matter. What you do is important. And I'm just so grateful for what each person does, regardless of your role. Those that work in the kitchen, grievance officers, disciplinary, whatever. Man, all of you guys play such an important role. Whoever's opening your mail, right? You guys matter. It makes such a difference. So that would be my word of encouragement, is don't give up. For you guys that are seasoned vets, that maybe you're thinking about riding off into the sunset, here's my word to you. Please, I'm begging right now, please, don't you dare think about leaving without doing some mentoring first. We need leaders. We need mentors. We need people that are passing on what they know, especially why you do what you do, to this great new group of individuals that are going to be taking the reins and leading charge. Please do not walk off and ride off into that sunset without sharing what you know. If you're disgruntled, don't share that. Keep it positive, because we do work in a great profession, but share the things that you know, because we need it. So that's what I would say to you, is just thank you. And of course, I always say this, it's my tagline on every email: be safe, man, go home, be safe. Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tate, for being with us on this episode, and hopefully, it'll be the first of many more as we continue on in this podcast adventure, I guess we'll say. But guys, good information, awesome stuff there. So take it to heart, find something to smile about, find a way to cause somebody else to smile. And guys, as always, stay sharp, stay safe, stay vigilant. Godspeed until the next time.